A very good evening and welcome to Granada Reports. Today we are live in Southport, where today a usually quiet residential street has been turned into a scene described as a nightmare.
As we come on air tonight, we can tell you at least 8 people have been injured by a teenager with a knife. The target was a Taylor Swift summer dance event for children between the ages of 6 and 10.
Well, a huge police presence remains here on Hart Street. Some of the faces of those emergency workers who've attended show the true scale of the tragedy that's been unfolding here throughout the day.
Tonight, police have confirmed that a teenager is in custody, a 17-year-old from the Banks area of Southport. They say there is no wider threat to the public and they are appealing for people not to speculate about events here. They're planning a news conference shortly. The injured have been taken to 3 hospitals, including Alderhay Children's Hospital, where they've declared a major incident.
In a moment, we'll get the latest from our reporters at both Alderhay Hospital and Southport and Formby Hospital.
But first, our reporter Tim Scott has the latest and a warning. His report features first-hand accounts that are distressing.
At around 11:50 this morning, police were called to a property on Hart Street in Southport after reports of a stabbing and a number of casualties, including children. Officers have detained a 17-year-old from the Banks area of Southport and seized a knife. This man was working nearby when it happened.
The next thing, one of my colleagues screaming down the phone at me, "You need to get out here now, get out here now. Something going on." And when I went out, he's holding like a 6-year-old girl in his arms, covered in blood, trying to save her. He'd been in the building more or less and got her out. He needs a medal. And then the others were coming out, and then I noticed some more on the floor over here.
This man, speaking to ITV News, said his mother, who lives nearby, witnessed horrific scenes.
So she went out to see what was going on. And because she can hear screaming and crying, and she goes out, she goes round to see what happened, and all she said was she saw the members of, I don't know, either police or ambulance carrying out a few bodies of girls. They were in white, but they were covered in red, covered in blood. She said she could see the stab wounds in the backs of the children, yeah, but that's what she saw.
This woman received a phone call from her auntie, who saw people leaving the centre after the incident.
My auntie rang me in absolute distraught, saying that she burst into tears on the phone to me. I said, "What's up?" She said, "I've watched a bunch of kids crawl out and run out screaming." She said, "It's a scream I'd never want to hear ever again." And I said, "Why? What do you mean?" She said, "I've watched them run out full of blood, and I've watched parents carry them out." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Someone's been stabbed, like they're all covered in blood." And then she watched staff come out and she basically was just distraught. She was crying on the phone, and then all she heard then was police turning up. And she said it's just a scream that no one wants to hear ever.
The Home Secretary updated MPs in Parliament after hearing the news.
I know the whole House will be very concerned at the extremely serious incident that has taken place in Southport. All of our thoughts will be with the family and loved ones of those who are affected. I have been in contact with the Merseyside Police and Crime Commissioner and the Merseyside Mayor to convey my support to the police and our thanks to the police and emergency services for their swift and courageous response. The response to this awful incident is currently unfolding, and the House and the public will be updated in due course.
It's thought that children were enjoying a Taylor Swift party at the Hart Centre, a fitness and health class venue, when the knifeman struck. The event was for 6 to 11-year-olds, according to this flyer. For some of the emergency services at the scene, what they witnessed was clearly distressing. North West Ambulance Service said it has treated 8 patients with stab injuries who have been taken to Alderhay Children's Hospital, Aintree University Hospital and Southport and Formby Hospital.
Well, as you can imagine, just widespread shock here in particular. Our correspondent Rob Smith has been here throughout the day for us. Rob, what have people here been telling you?
They have been bursting into tears. so many people the moment they started talking about what they saw and what they heard today. I'm not sure traumatised is a strong enough word. One man told me about his mum who'd looked out of her window after hearing a scream quite unlike anything she'd ever heard before, and saw children being brought out wearing white clothes, absolutely drenched in blood, and then saw a mum go running into this place screaming, looking for her child. Another resident told me that a mum had driven up this road with her daughter trying to get away and had to stop the car because her daughter was losing consciousness. She got out and started shouting for help, and she went over and she said there was blood everywhere, and I tried to persuade her to go to the paramedics, to go where the emergency services were, but she was terrified. All she wanted to do was get away. Every single person that's had something to say today has just, quite frankly, stopped me and everyone else around in their tracks.
Yeah. And Rob, what do we know about the event that was taking place at the time, a Taylor Swift summer camp?
Yeah, so this was a yoga and dance camps themed around Taylor Swift. It had been advertised for weeks. It was for primary school children. It was in a place that usually holds events for pregnant women, holds mum and baby classes, yoga groups for children, like this one today. One granddad I spoke to who didn't want to speak on camera, he was so upset. His granddaughter was meant to be going to this thing. They were booking a ticket for it. And when they tried to do it, it was already booked out. He said, we were just too late. He said, I have never been happier to be late in my entire life.
Well, we've had high praise for the emergency services at a very high level today, and police were very quick to reassure the public here. They said that they had detained a suspect very quickly. What do we know about that suspect, Rob?
So, armed police detaining a suspect, seizing that knife. What we know in the past hour, the police have said that the person they have in custody is 17 years old, 17-year-old boy. He's being questioned. Apart from that, not a great many more details, but there is a police conference in about 20 or so minutes from now, and they'll be giving us much more information to the community at large.
And Rob, reaction from all over the country to this tragic, terrible event.
Yeah, the Prime Minister has spoken of shock and praised the emergency services. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has done exactly the same thing. There's been reaction locally too. The Bishop of Liverpool is talking about everyone being in his prayers, thinking of everyone here, and Southport FC, the football club, handing over their ground tonight for the emergency services to use to get their work done.
Rob, thank you.
Okay, let's go live now to two hospitals that have been treating casualties. Anna Yosef is at Alderhay Children's Hospital.
Yeah, Anna, a truly terrible day for everyone involved, and a major incident has been declared there.
That's right, Lucy. The hospital has said its emergency department is extremely busy, and it's urging parents not to bring their children to A&E unless it's absolutely urgent. Now, we don't know how many of the children who were attacked in Southport have been brought here, but we do know that if a major incident has been declared, the hospital is now operating at capacity, which means it now goes to divert, which means it'll be sending other ambulances and paramedics to different hospitals. That's not something that happens that often. There are two major trauma centres in the northwest of England. One of them is here at Alderhay. This is where the most seriously ill children will be treated and have surgery. Now, they are going to be cared for by some of the top trauma specialists in the whole country, which should hopefully provide at least some comfort to those children's family and friends who tonight will be struggling to come to terms with the horrors of today. We'll now go over to my colleague Emma Sweeney, who's at the Southport and Formby District Hospital. Emma, what's the situation there?
Well, Anna, of the 13 ambulances that were sent to the scene this morning, we know that a number of them ended up here at this hospital, although we don't know exactly how many. Ordinarily, this is a hospital that looks after adult A&E patients, not child A&E patients. And today we don't know whether or not any of the casualties that ended up here were in fact children, but certainly this hospital is the closest hospital to the scene, and as we've been here throughout the course of the afternoon, we've seen quite a few ambulances and one paediatric ambulance amongst them, and a lot of police vehicles as well. Now, I spoke to a trauma specialist this afternoon. I asked him what exactly will be going on behind those hospital doors. He told me the number one priority for medics this afternoon will be to stabilise those patients, and then, if needed, to send them to more specialist hospitals. The trust that runs both this hospital and Ormskirk tweeted a couple of hours ago to say that the appointments at both hospitals were running as normal throughout the course of this afternoon, but that the A&E departments were really busy. And again, that is something that we have witnessed as we've been here, as people try to fathom the unfathomable.
Emma, thank you.
Okay, let's just recap today's events here in Southport. What we know is at least 8 people, some of who were children, have been injured after a knife attack at a family centre this lunchtime.
Yeah, police were called to the Hart Space Centre on Hart Street, just behind us. That was just before midday. A Taylor Swift-themed dance class was taking place for young children.
Well, multiple people, some of them children, were stabbed by a man who was later detained by police. Police have the 17-year-old in custody.
People here in Southport have been describing the scene as something from a horror film. We've spoken to residents here who have spent the day coming to terms with what's happened.
One of my colleagues screaming down the phone at me, "You need to get out here now. Get out here now, something going on." And when I went out, he's holding like a 6-year-old girl in his arms, covered in blood, trying to save her. He'd been in the building more or less and got her out. He needs a medal. And then the others were coming out, and then I noticed some more on the floor over here. So I'm on the phone, then, and I just called the police. I was on the phone for about 20 minutes, telling them you need loads of ambulances. You need to get the paramedics here as well, get them here now.
We're all kind of just like up in the air about it at the moment, but obviously this absolutely despicable thing that's happened is like I said, hit us hard as a community.
Terrible, absolutely awful. Just can't begin to comprehend what's gone on today. How could anybody do this to children? It just doesn't bear thinking about. It just doesn't. Terrible.
Had around 15 to 20 people running out. Now, that's not what anyone wants to hear. I mean, at the same time, it's a kids' like workshop. It's a Taylor Swift dance workshop. I mean, it's not what anyone wants to hear. So, at the same time, the kids trying to have fun on the summer holidays, and the first day that they're able to do something, and something drastic's happened. And
I heard the emergency response. But we get a lot of incidents on this road, so it didn't bother me. But I started getting texts asking if I was okay. And that was when I found out something had happened. So I came out and the neighbours were outside and I was talking to them, and we knew there'd been a stabbing. And I should have been cycling past when it happened.
There was a guy in a van who was working on a house up the road. He was unbelievable. He just was going in there, he had no shirt on, he was a builder, I think, covered in blood. He was bringing them out, and he was helping the paramedics, holding the bags up to give them fluid, but it didn't look great. A few of them didn't look great. I hope to God, I pray to God they're all right.
Yeah, the thing that we've been hearing most often today is how could anyone do this? How could anyone target such young children? And joining us now is Councillor Sean Housel. Sean, you know this area really well. Just how distressed are people here?
Heartbroken, I imagine, and the communities, it'll be devastating for much of the community. Like we spoke about earlier, I grew up about 10 doors down, directly facing where the centre is. It's not something that I would have ever imagined happening in this community at all. It's heartbreaking.
Sean, you've grown up here. This is your neck of the woods. What can you tell us about this community? How would you describe it?
It's quiet, super tight-knit. It's a lot of young families and younger people around this area, and it's devastating to hear, but hopefully the community will come together through this.
What sort of things have people been saying to you?
It's been very confused. There's not a lot of information out there, as everyone can understand, but I think just terrified. people are scared of what's going on, and yeah, it's kind of devastating.
Perfectly natural response, isn't it? I mean, as you were saying, this is a quiet residential street. You know this area really well. You would expect your children to be at their safest somewhere like this.
Absolutely. Like I said, I lived down here till I was 16 years old. It was always very quiet, no antisocial behaviour or anything to speak of. It was perfectly okay for us to play out on our bikes and play around the streets, and yeah, it's the last thing you expect.
There'll be a lot of deeply concerned people this evening. What will the council be doing to help those people who were worried tonight?
I'm sure the council will be reaching out and making sure that the people directly impacted are taken care of, and I'd urge all the Southport councillors to come together and make sure that whatever happens here, that the community wraps itself around those affected and make sure that we look after each other.
Is that the sort of community it is? I mean, we've heard stories today about how people straight away opened their doors to take children in who were hurt. Is that the sort of community it is?
Absolutely. I was born, lived in Southport my whole life, and that is what Southport is about. We look after each other, and very, very much I can imagine that people will continue to look out for each other after this.
Yeah, people will be putting arms around one another.
Absolutely.
What would your message be to the public, to the residents here, to reassure them? Because we know that a 17-year-old is now in police custody, but people will still be deeply worried.
Yeah, not to speculate, obviously, and not to jump to conclusions, but make sure we look after each other. Now's the time to make sure those that have been impacted are taken care of.
Well, Sean, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we wish you well dealing with the after effects of this, which I'm sure will be felt for a very long time. Thank you so much for joining us at such a difficult time. Well, you join Granada Reports now back in Southport with these terrible developments today. Our colleague Tim Scott has the latest on today's events.
At around 11:50 this morning, police were called to a property on Hart Street in Southport after reports of a stabbing and a number of casualties, including children. Officers have detained a 17-year-old from the Banks area of Southport and seized a knife. This man was working nearby when it happened.
The next thing, one of my colleagues screaming down the phone at me, "You need to get out here now. Get out here now, something going on." And when I went out, he's holding like a 6-year-old girl in his arms, covered in blood, trying to save her. He'd been in the building more or less and got her out. He needs a medal. And then the others were coming out, and then I noticed some more on the floor over here.
This man, speaking to ITV News, said his mother, who lives nearby, witnessed horrific scenes.
So she went out to see what was going on, and because she can hear screaming and crying, and she goes out, she goes round to see what happened, and all she said was she saw the members of, I don't know, either police or ambulance carrying out a few bodies of girls. They were in white, but they were covered in red, covered in blood. She said she could see the stab wounds in the backs of the children. Yeah, but that's what she saw.
This woman received a phone call from her auntie, who saw people leaving the centre after the incident.
My auntie rang me in absolute distraught, saying that she burst into tears on the phone to me. I said, "What's up?" She said, "I've watched a bunch of kids crawl out and run out screaming." She said, "It's a scream I'd never want to hear ever again." And I said, "Why? What do you mean?" She said, "I've watched them run out full of blood, and I've watched parents carry them out." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Someone's been stabbed, like they're all covered in blood." And then she watched staff come out, and she basically was just distraught. She was crying on the phone, and then all she heard then was police turning up. And she said it's just a scream that no one wants to hear ever.
The Home Secretary updated MPs in Parliament after hearing the news.
I know the whole House will be very concerned at the extremely serious incident that has taken place in Southport. All of our thoughts will be with the family and loved ones of those who are affected. I have been in contact with the Merseyside Police and Crime Commissioner and the Merseyside Mayor to convey my support to the police and our thanks to the police and emergency services for their swift and courageous response. The response to this awful incident is currently unfolding, and the House and the public will be updated in due course.
It's thought that children were enjoying a Taylor Swift party at the Heart Centre, a fitness and health class venue, when the knifeman struck. The event was for 6 to 11-year-olds, according to this flyer. For some of the emergency services at the scene, what they witnessed was clearly distressing. North West Ambulance Service said it has treated 8 patients with stab injuries who have been taken to Alderhay Children's Hospital, Aintree University Hospital and Southport and Formby Hospital.
That was Tim Scott, our reporter, with an update for you if you've just joined us. And we're still now with Rob Smith, because we're expecting a news conference to get underway shortly, Rob.
Yeah, in about 10 minutes it's going to happen at a community fire station in Southport. We're expecting to hear more about the investigation, more detail of what went on, more detail of the arrest, and just get a notion of where this is going tonight. It's been an awful lot of hurt and pain during the course of the day from so many people, and so many people asking for more and more information. Hopefully that's going to come out from this news conference.
Rob, we believe that a house is being searched that is linked to this investigation. What more do we know about that?
Yeah, it's been cordoned off for a little while now. Quite a lot of police activity there. We know, as we say, that a suspect has been arrested. This place is being searched. Again, we're expecting more details of that when police take to the podium.
Yeah, and that suspect just 17 years old, which will come as a huge shock, I'm sure, to people in this area tonight. Been the most awful of days, and really hard to hear what people have been telling you today.
It's been incredibly hard to hear from people talking about seeing children, young children, with their clothes soaked in blood, seeing children barely conscious, panicking, screaming. I don't think you can listen to that during the course of a day and not find yourself affected by that. And so many people have just cried, just burst into tears, either the moment they've started talking or a few seconds into speaking, because this is not something that is meant to happen. This is not something that people are meant to see. I spoke to one woman who used to run her own daycare service for children, and she said, how can someone do this? How can someone do this to innocent kids? These were young primary school children. One guy who was going around here today with water, he'd gone to the supermarkets to get supplies for people, for the emergency services. And he just said that he had seen and he had heard, he had been around people who had been affected, and he just stood there and stopped in complete silence because he just couldn't take it in. He just couldn't take it in. I think when you hear about all of that, it really gives you a sense of horrific is just not a strong enough word for what's happened here today.
So, with that in mind, Robin, given the fact that you have been here all day, how would you describe the mood around here this evening?
I think there has been a surprising amount of silence, people who just don't know what to say, people who just don't know how to react, because how on earth could you? How on earth could you when presented with something like this? There are many places that the emergency services go, there are many places that reporters go, where people are talking amongst themselves the whole time, when people are trying to gather information about what's gone on, when people are looking at what's behind the cordon there, and they're chattering. That just wasn't happening today. That shock, that impact of what's happened just beggars belief. It really does.
It is so rare to see reporters, to see the emergency services, as you say, just reduced to silence today.
Yeah, I just don't think that happens. And you've got figures like the Prime Minister saying that he is horrendous. This is horrendous. He's deeply shocked. Thoughts are with all those affected, the police and emergency services, thanking them for their swift response. The Home Secretary saying she's deeply concerned. She's spoken to police in Merseyside. And the Bishop of Liverpool, as we said earlier, shocked and saddened by what's happened here, says that his prayers are and will remain with all of those.
Rob, thank you.
Truly terrible stuff.
And a news conference coming up very soon. Thank you for that, Rob.
Well, that's all from us from Southport this evening. As we said earlier, press conference is due to start in the next few minutes, where police are expected to reveal more details about what happened.
Yeah, we believe that news conference is due to start at about 6:30. As Rob was saying, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, is due to make a statement. That is believed to be happening at 6:45, so please stay with ITV. ITV News, of course, is next, but from the team here in Southport, good night.
Hi.
United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.
Hello there. Very good evening to you. Hope you've had a smashing day. So, summer is here. And so are the flying ants. Did you see as many as I did last night? It's going to be a very interesting week. Starting off summery, finishing up quite autumnal with a thundery breakdown from the south in the middle. So at the moment there's a great big area of high pressure, sprawling high, influencing much of England and Wales, keeping us fine and dry until Wednesday. A few fronts trying to come up against it, but actually what really concerns us is this system down towards the south and southeast here. High confidence that there are some thunderstorms on that. In fact, a warning in force for us on Thursday, but low confidence on the details, so we're keeping an eye on it for you. We're not quite sure how far north it's going to get at the moment. For this evening, though, a fine evening, lots of warm sunshine. It's my favourite time of day. The intensity's gone out of the sun and everything's very calm. And then overnight, staying mostly clear, a little bit of high cloud from the north and west there across the Isle of Man, and we're expecting temperatures to hover in the mid-teens Celsius, maybe an odd shallow mist or fog patch. Sun's up tomorrow about 5:25 in the morning, sets about 9:10 in the evening, and it's fine and bright for most of us. That cloud continues to try and push southeastwards, but melts away as it does so, the sun being really strong and getting to work on it. It's another warm day, maybe not quite as warm as today. 24 is 75 Fahrenheit, but the humidity really starting to ramp up overnight into Wednesday. Of course, the sun's been on our houses and flats all day, warming them up. They don't let go of the heat very easily, so starting to feel quite sticky and uncomfortable by the time we get through into Wednesday. That sets the scene for Thursday, that humidity triggering a thunderstorm warning from noon until midnight, and there could be some torrential downpours, but feeling a bit fresher by the weekend. Bye-bye.
Cleaned up well. United Utilities sponsors ITV Granada weather.